I had been married to the big boss William for 2 years, except for the routine 3 times a week. He'd always been distant toward me. Later, the news that William comforted my sister in tears and took his private jet to chase after his beloved woman dominated the trending searches. Heartbroken and hopeless, I left with my unborn child. 2 years later, William showed up outside my apartment with his bodyguards. I froze for a moment before he could speak. I quickly shoved the little girl in my arms into his brother-in-law. Perfect timing. Help me watch the kid for a bit. My boyfriend's taking me out to dinner. William held the child in one hand, pressed me against the door with the other, and chuckled softly. Brother-in-law? You've got quite the imagination. Lily, our daughter, widened her curious eyes to stare at him. While I was equally stunned, William glanced at the little girl, then leaned close to me, his voice low and dangerous. Lily, you fucking need to be taught a lesson. Chapter 1. The office was unusually lively that day. A female colleague had just gotten engaged. Her fiancé had given her an 8-carat diamond ring. All the other female teachers crowded around in admiration. Full of envy, I offered a polite compliment, then quietly went back to writing my lesson plans. That colleague had always had it out for me, and now she wasn't going to waste this chance. Lily, your Bulgari wedding band looks nice too. Thanks. Though it's just a basic model without any diamonds. At least it's a luxury brand. Your husband isn't too bad, I guess. I smiled faintly and said nothing. We've worked together for years, and none of us have ever seen what your husband looks like. Yeah. Lily, when are you going to bring him around? He's busy, not the social type. My colleague let out a mocking laugh. Oh, please. How busy can he be? Busier than the mayor? Exactly. Everyone's got time for dinner, it's just that he doesn't care enough. I shook my head with a small sigh. He really is busy. Sorry. You don't get it. One of them sneered. She's just too afraid to show him off. Another snorted. What? Does she think we're all dying to see her Swamp Thing husband? I stood up, calm but firm. My husband's picking me up after work. You can see him for yourself. When William's limited edition Rolls-Royce Cullinan stopped in front of the school gate, the entire faculty went into an uproar. And when a tall, impossibly handsome man in a custom-tailored suit stepped out, silence fell. I tightened my grip on my purse, put on my brightest smile, and walked over. Darling. William looked slightly surprised, one brow lifting, but he came forward anyway, took my bag, and wrapped an arm naturally around my waist. The principal and other administrators rushed over, eager to greet him respectfully. After all, one of the office buildings and the library had both been donated by the Sue family. After a few polite exchanges, William Sue led me to the car. Before getting in, I turned back and caught my colleague's face. Her lips were pale, trembling slightly, and the ring that had been shining on her finger had mysteriously disappeared. I looked away, gently took William's hand. Thank you for picking me up, darling. William said nothing. He simply pulled me against his chest, fingers brushing my earlobe. Then behave yourself tonight. That's when I remembered, tonight was one of those scheduled nights again. Chapter 2. At 10 o'clock that night, William finished his work in the study. When he pushed open the bedroom door, I was sitting in front of the dresser, applying body oil. The moment I lifted my gaze, the mirror reflected his tall, lean figure. He had just finished a video conference, a faint trace of weariness softening his usually sharp expression. The bridge of his nose was high and straight, with shallow marks left by the glasses he'd just taken off. William glanced at me briefly, then reached up and swiftly tugged his shirt free from his trousers. In that fleeting moment, I caught sight of the firm lines of his abdomen, taut muscles arranged in perfect symmetry, and felt a sudden warmth spread across the back of my neck. It was hard to imagine that someone as busy as he was still managed to find time to work out, maintaining a body that perfect. If not for that, perhaps I wouldn't have fallen for him so recklessly, marrying him right after graduation. Utterly entranced, I set the bottle of oil down, wiped my hands, and stepped toward him. Let me, I said softly. William paused, and I rose on my toes, carefully helping him unbutton his shirt. But before I could finish, he suddenly swept me up and set me on the vanity table. He bent down, lightly biting my earlobe. Why do you smell so good tonight? I just used a new skincare oil. William let out a low chuckle. His long, strong hands sliding around my waist. His fingers traced lazy circles over my skin before tightening, pulling me flush against him. I could feel the change in his body, heat rising in waves, and my cheeks burned as I lowered my eyes. "Honey," I whispered, my face pressed against his chest, listening to the steady thud of his heartbeat. He replied softly, his lips finding mine. I had meant to ask him something, whether the rumor about that rich and beautiful intern chasing after him was true. Even my best friend had heard about it. But William knew my body too well. Within moments, all thought fled, leaving me breathless and dazed. The bottles and jars on the vanity toppled over one by one, scattering in chaos. William tilted my chin upward, forcing me to meet my own reflection in the mirror. There, I saw my flushed face, my round almond eyes shimmering with misty desire, the look of a woman completely consumed by love and longing. Chapter 3. Lily. William's voice was low and hoarse. I lowered my eyes, meeting his. The faint red veins in them told me he hadn't been resting well. He'd been working overtime for days, pushing himself to exhaustion. Maybe for William, those 3 nights a week were simply a way to relieve stress. But for me, they were the only moments I truly felt close to him. A dull ache filled my chest. I tried to swallow it down, then leaned forward and kissed him gently. He looked startled by my rare initiative. After a brief glance into my eyes, his movements grew rougher, more intense. By the end, I could barely hold on, my eyes welling with tears. "Darling." Only then did William scoop me into his arms and carry me into the bathroom. As I drifted toward sleep, he pulled me close, his breath warm against my hair. "Undine has been dismissed," he murmured. "She was just imagining things. There's nothing between us." Too drowsy to open my eyes, I simply nodded faintly. "Sleep now," William whispered, pressing a gentle kiss to my forehead. Chapter 4. That Friday night, after our routine duty was done, William Su flew to Hong Kong on a business trip. By Tuesday, there was still no word from him. After class, I sat in the office sipping tea, sorting through my lesson plans. The colleague at the next desk was scrolling on her phone when she suddenly shrieked. "Oh my God, this is like a drama playing out in real life." No celebrity in the entire entertainment industry could beat that face. A private jet chasing after his sweetheart. Who's this billionaire pampering his little wife? But the most important thing, look at those hands. The way he's wiping her tears. How can a man's hands look this good? "Lily, come here. Don't you think he looks like your Mr. Su?" My colleague shoved her phone toward me, and right away, I saw them, those hands. Long, slender, and strong. The joints were clearly defined, the nails perfectly trimmed. On his left ring finger, there was a Bulgari wedding band, the same one as mine. Instinctively, I curled my fingers into a fist. Those hands had touched me countless times. I had traced every line of them when he slept, memorized every detail. I knew them better than I knew myself. Even William probably didn't realize, on the edge of his left pinky, there was a tiny brown mole. I had even kissed it, secretly, once. Staring at the photo, my tears began to fall uncontrollably. William was wiping another woman's tears, and that woman was my half-sister. He had never once wiped mine. Maybe he never even realized how many times I'd cried since marrying him. Chapter 5. When William called, I was sitting alone in a cafe, staring blankly at my untouched cup. That photo had been the spark. Ever since I saw it, fragments of strange memories had flooded my mind. I suddenly realized this world I lived in was nothing more than a second-rate online novel, and I was just a supporting character, a tool for the plot. My sister, Eva, was William's first love, his true beloved. The reason he married me was simple. Eva had broken up with him and left the country in a fit of cold resolve. In a moment of anger and wounded pride, William proposed to me, estranged from my parents and sister. I'd been completely in the dark all along. Now, Eva was dying, and her final wish was to spend her last days with William. As for me, the stubborn wife who refused to divorce him, I was forced to abort my child. Then William asked me to donate a kidney to my sister to keep her alive a little longer. After 2 years of marriage, he still didn't know, maybe because of the Ma family genes. My body was weak too. If I lost this child, I might never be able to have another. Chapter 6. I'll be back the day after tomorrow. Do you want me to bring you anything? William's voice was calm. As usual, I gripped the phone, and for the first time, allowed myself a small, spoiled request. I want those egg tarts from Macau, the ones from the oldest shop. He was silent for a moment. All right, anything else? I want my husband to come home early, I said softly, teasing, a hint of playfulness I'd never dared before. I'll be back the day after tomorrow. Maybe it was just my imagination, but for once, his voice sounded gentle. After the call ended, William told his assistant, "We'll detour to Macau tomorrow." The assistant blinked in surprise, but immediately began rearranging the schedule. William set his phone down on the desk, lit a cigarette. Something crossed his mind, and unexpectedly, he smiled. Even his usually cold, distant eyes seemed to soften, carrying a faint, unguarded tenderness. Chapter 7. On my way home, the photos of my sister, head lowered, crying softly, suddenly hit the trending list. A top comment had already climbed to the #1 spot. I think I finally understand how devastating a first love can be. That one line set off a wildfire of discussion. Yeah, just a few tears, or even just standing there quietly, she's already unbeatable. I can't imagine if my husband had a first love like that. Even as a woman, I feel sorry for her. What man could possibly resist that? Am I the only one who noticed how beautiful the man's hand is while wiping her tears? Did you also notice he's wearing a wedding ring? His wife must be heartbroken. But honestly, losing to a woman like that, it's almost understandable. Wait, people found out. That's the billionaire who sent a private jet to pick her up. Tell me who it is. The logo on the jet says Sue Group. Which Sue Group? Come on, which other one could it be? My phone buzzed with several incoming messages. When I opened them, they were from that same colleague who'd just gotten engaged. Lily, is this your husband? The wedding ring on his hand looks exactly like yours. And the jet's from Sue Group too. The woman in the photo, she's your sister, right? You two really do look alike, though she's a bit more of that fragile, pure white flower type. We were all so jealous that day when your husband came to pick you up in that fancy car. But now, being a rich man's wife doesn't seem so enviable. Lily, I actually think you're really pitiful. Chapter 8. I stared at those messages for a long time without replying. She wasn't wrong. The wedding ring in that photo was William's. It matched mine perfectly. The private jet was his too. I'd only ridden it once. William was discreet by nature. He disliked showing off. And unless absolutely necessary, he never used it. And the woman in those photos really was my half-sister. She'd always been frail since childhood. The kind of delicate that invited everyone's protection, especially our father's. Being a rich man's wife really wasn't easy. But to be fair, my life with William these past 2 years had been mostly peaceful. So, was Lily pitiful? I thought about it carefully. If you don't foolishly expect your husband to love you wholeheartedly, then no. She isn't pitiful at all. But me? I was foolish. Because I wanted him to love me. Chapter 9. By the time William returned, the online chaos had completely died down. The trending posts had been wiped clean, as though nothing had ever happened. He didn't bring it up, and I pretended not to know. Sitting cross-legged on the couch, I nibbled on an egg tart. By the time William came out of the shower, I was already on my third one. He walked over and took the box from my hands. Too many sweets at night, you'll get indigestion. I reached to grab it back, but they won't taste as good tomorrow. Maybe it was the warm light of the room, but even his usually cold expression seemed to soften a little. I'll buy you more, he said simply, but still took the box away. Then, with a gentle motion, he brushed a crumb from the corner of my lips. Before I could react, William leaned down and kissed me. At the same time, a sudden cool touch brushed against my neck. I instinctively reached up and felt a sapphire necklace. I saw it in Macau, he said casually. Thought it was beautiful, so I bought it. I froze for a moment, emotions tangling inside me. Was this just a casual gift, or an apology? Don't like it? William murmured, his lips brushing my forehead before trailing lower. My eyes fluttered closed. William, I wanted to say I haven't brushed my teeth yet. What did you call me? He bit my lip, just a little too hard. I gasped softly, my hands rising on their own to circle his neck. Darling, I whispered. Chapter 10. William seemed to especially enjoy hearing me call him darling, and that night, perhaps because he'd been away on business for several days, his desire burned stronger than ever. But when the hand wearing his wedding ring pressed against my heart, a sharp ache suddenly surged through me, my throat tightening, eyes stinging with the threat of tears. The rhythm of my heartbeat pulsed beneath his palm, and the ring left a faint mark against my skin. I didn't let William see me cry. In that instant, as my tears fell silently, I wrapped my arms around him tighter and moved in sync with him. His passion grew rougher, almost desperate, as though he wanted to pull me into himself entirely. Lily, he whispered my name hoarsely, over and over again, until everything dissolved into trembling breath and heat. Chapter 11. The next morning, near noon, I received a call from my sister. Lily, do you want to come out for tea? I was drying my long, damp hair, staring at my reflection in the vanity mirror, but all I could see in my mind was that photo of her, tear-streaked, fragile, heartbreakingly beautiful. I lowered my gaze slowly. Is something wrong, sister? Lily, about those rumors between William and me. I wanted to explain them to you in person. What rumors? He didn't tell you? She sounded surprised, even apologetic. I'm so sorry. Lily, I didn't know he hadn't said anything. Is there anything else? I asked, my voice calm but distant. Lily, are you mad at me? Her breath hitched softly, a faint sob breaking through. I didn't mean to hurt you. Lily, I'm dying soon. I can't help it. I miss him so much. I ended the call quietly. I didn't know whether to cry or to hate. I had been blissfully ignorant, marrying the man I loved, never realizing I was just a disposable pawn. I couldn't accept the ending written for me in that story, because from the beginning to the end, I, who was deceived, had done nothing wrong. I didn't want to die on an operating table, my child gone, my organs taken to save someone else. So, I made a decision. Chapter 12. By late October, Beijing had already turned cold. After landing, William didn't head to the office as usual. Instead, he told the driver to go straight home. He'd been busy lately. Nearly half a month had passed since he last saw Lily. When the car pulled into the villa, William stepped out, a servant immediately rushing over to take the things from his hands. He stopped her with a gesture. Where's Madam? The servant froze for a moment. Madam went to City C for a school research conference. Didn't you know, sir? William's footsteps halted abruptly. He slowly lifted his gaze toward the dark windows of their bedroom on the second floor. The entire estate was silent, eerily so. He had never realized how empty the house could feel without Lily in it. When did she leave? 2 days ago. The servant replied carefully. William said nothing more and walked into the main hall. In his study, he pulled out his phone and checked the weather in City C. His brows furrowed deeper and deeper. City C was surrounded by mountains on 3 sides, and the news said it had been raining for days, some areas already reporting landslides. A strange sense of dread settled in his chest. He tried calling Lily, but the line wouldn't connect. Chapter 13. William arrived in the city at 4 in the morning. It had been raining for 3 days and 3 nights straight. When the mudslide came, Lily didn't make it out. Her body, swallowed by the collapsing mountain and torrents of mud, was never found. The school principal was drenched in cold sweat, his legs trembling so badly he could hardly stand, not daring to meet William's eyes. William Sue sat silently on the sofa. In front of him lay Lily's handbag, the only thing she had left behind. Beads of sweat rolled down the principal's forehead. Mr. Sue, why did you send her here for this event? No. Mr. Sue, it wasn't like that. This time, Teacher Ma signed up on her own. William suddenly lifted his head, his gaze sharp. She volunteered? Yes, we actually planned to send someone else. This area's remote. The conditions aren't good. He forced out a weak laugh. After all, their school received millions in annual donations from the Sue family. He wouldn't have dared inconvenience Mrs. Sue, not even with 100 lives to spare. William's eyes seemed to freeze on something far away. It was his negligence, his carelessness. Now that he thought about it, she had been acting different lately, but he hadn't paid much attention. He'd simply thought her newfound affection, her sudden dependence, her soft voice when she called him darling, was a good sign. He'd been glad to see her like that. He just never stopped to wonder why she had changed. Chapter 14. Late at night again. William hadn't slept for 2 days and 2 nights. Now, he stood before his desk, staring blankly at the papers laid out before him. They'd been found inside Lily's handbag, a divorce agreement, and a short, handwritten letter. The divorce papers were typed, already signed by her, but the letter, she'd written it herself. William, I already know about you and my sister. I've thought about it for a long time, and I've decided to leave you. I've prepared the divorce agreement. When I come back from City C, let's get divorced. Red veins webbed his bloodshot eyes. After reading the note, William couldn't even name the feeling that welled inside him. He held the divorce papers tightly for a long moment, then let out a bitter, hollow laugh. A second later, he crushed the papers into a ball and hurled them into the trash. Chapter 15. My funeral was held quietly, almost secretive, since my body was never found. They built only a cenotaph in my name. Not even the sharpest paparazzi managed to catch a photo of William at the service. Rumors spread in the tabloids that after my accidental death, the Ma family was already preparing to marry my sister, Eva Ma, into the Sue family. As for the Sue family, and William Sue himself, no one knew where they stood. I didn't want to see any of it, so I closed the webpage. In the original story, it wasn't me who died in that accident. It was another colleague, one I had always gotten along with. She came from an ordinary family, had just gotten married, and recently had a baby girl. Her marriage was full of love and warmth. After her death, her husband was devastated, tried to end his life several times, never remarried, and spent the rest of his years searching for her remains. But this time, the one who died was me, the unnecessary, inconvenient Lily, and she, that good woman, would live, a complete family, husband and child, safe and happy. Somehow, that thought filled me with peace. I'd never been an ambitious person. I'd always settled for the life I had. But this time, in silence, I'd changed another woman's fate. For the first time, I felt that my uneventful 20-some years hadn't been so meaningless after all. It's a pity, though, in the novel, I was just cannon fodder, erased from the story too early, so I had no idea what happened next. But maybe that's fine. The rest of life, whatever it may be, is full of unknowns and possibilities. And maybe, just maybe, that's a good thing. Chapter 16. The following autumn, in a quiet southern town, I gave birth to my daughter, Yuzu. During the entire pregnancy, I'd been obsessed with pomelos to an almost ridiculous degree, so I simply named her after my craving. By then, I had taken back my mother's surname and begun a new life, no longer Lily Ma, the second daughter of the Ma family. When Yuzu turned 100 days old, I saw the news. Eva was in critical condition. The hospital had issued over a dozen emergency notices. But later, it was William who flew in a team of foreign medical specialists. After working through the night, they managed to save her. When Eva was transferred back to a regular ward, she was surrounded by family and friends. In the corner of one of the photos, I caught a glimpse of William's sleeve. At that very moment, Yuzu was hospitalized with neonatal pneumonia. Late at night, it was only me and the nanny sitting beside her bed. My sister, Eva Ma, was the Ma family's legitimate heiress, the daughter everyone cherished. All her life, she had easily possessed everything precious. Even the love I had longed for so deeply was something she could cast aside without care. But that's how it always is for the fortunate ones. No matter how much they break the world still revolves around them. I touched Yuzu's tiny, soft face and turned away, tears slipping silently down my cheeks. It hurt, but I didn't regret it, because I couldn't imagine a world without her in it. Chapter 17. On the anniversary of Lily's death, the light in the master bedroom of the Sue estate stayed on all night. The rescue team that had been stationed in City C for a year still hadn't found her body. Everyone, both openly and discreetly, had advised him to let go. But deep down, William had always clung to one irrational thought. If there was no body, didn't that mean Lily might still be alive? He sat on the sofa, utterly exhausted, the sapphire necklace clutched in his hand. It was on this very sofa that he'd once fastened it around her neck himself. Back then, he'd been happy, thinking she had finally softened toward him, finally learned to act like a gentle little wife. But in truth, she must have already heard the rumors by then, even though he'd moved immediately to suppress the trending topics and pull every article. The world is full of cracks, no wall can keep out the wind. For some reason, that night kept replaying in his mind now, frame by frame, her sudden eagerness, her desperate embrace, her trembling voice calling him darling again and again. Was it passion that drove her, or pain she was trying to hide? William slowly opened his palm. The sapphire glittered brilliantly in the dim light, but even its radiance couldn't compare to how it had gleamed that night against her skin. Leaning back on the sofa, he closed his eyes. In the faint light, no one saw the tear tracing down his face, soaking into his dark hair before vanishing completely. After a moment, William stood and carefully placed the necklace back in its box. Then he looked up at the wedding photo hanging on the wall. In it, Lily smiled shyly, gently. The way she gazed at him was full of unhidden, unmistakable love. William picked up his phone and made a call. Call the search team back from City C. Sir, you mean, to stop the search? No, William said quietly, his tone steady. Keep searching every city in the country. Mr. Su? If she's not in China, then look abroad. Yes. Mr. Su, where should we start first? William paused for a long while before answering softly, naming a small town. It was the same town Lily had once mentioned to him, back when they were newly married. The town where her mother had been born, and the place where her mother was buried. Chapter 18. By that time, I had already left the city where my mother was born and raised. So when I received a call from an old neighbor, I was startled, but only for a moment. The surprise quickly gave way to calm. In truth, my so-called fake death had never been airtight. It was only a matter of time before William figured it out. What worried me more now was this: no matter how hard I tried to change things, would I still end up walking back into the original storyline? Was William's search for me truly out of love, or just to claim the kidney he needed for my sister? After all, Eva's condition was still critical. She couldn't keep surviving by luck alone, and as her biological sister, my tissue match was almost guaranteed. In the original story, that was exactly how it went. After my death, William had my kidney transplanted into Eva's body. They lived happily ever after, a perfect couple, growing old together, while the supporting female character like me. No one pitied her. No one even remembered her. So what should I do now to keep that ending from happening again? Chapter 19. Not long after Yuzu's first birthday, I was about to head out for errands when she clung to me like a little koala, refusing to let go. No amount of coaxing from the nanny worked. And then, William appeared at my apartment door, flanked by a dozen bodyguards. I froze. The little girl hanging from my neck froze too. William's gaze swept over me first, then slowly shifted downward, landing on Yuzu. Before he could say a word, I snatched Yuzu into my arms and thrust her toward him. Perfect timing. Brother-in-law, do me a favor and watch the baby for a bit. My boyfriend's waiting to have dinner with me. The first meeting between father and daughter was never going to be tender. People always say fatherly love takes time to grow. Yuzu was adorable, charming. If he spent enough time with her, maybe he'd grow fond of her. And who knows, maybe, through her, he'd soften toward me too. No one wants to die. No one wants to lose an organ for free. I wasn't about to play the fool again, but I also knew my limits. So right now, I needed to make things clear. Draw the line. I wouldn't interfere with him and my sister. And hopefully, he'd show me some mercy in return. William looked as if he didn't know whether to laugh or get angry. Holding Yuzu in one arm, he pinned me against the door with the other, a dangerous smirk tugging at his lips. Brother-in-law, you've really learned how to play. Lily, my daughter's eyes went wide with curiosity, while I stared back at him, equally stunned. The nanny, clearly terrified, fumbled for her phone to call the police, but William's bodyguards politely ushered her out before she could dial. As the door closed, I overheard one of them saying quietly, "That's our madam. Don't worry, she's safe." Chapter 20. The word madam made my mind go completely blank. William let out a short, humorless laugh. then lowered his gaze toward the little girl dangling from his arm. Something in his eyes softened, just slightly. You stay right here, he told her. He carried Yuzu to the playpen and set her down gently. Normally, she was my little tyrant, clingy and mischievous, impossible to contain. Whenever I tried to put her in the playpen, she'd scream and reach for me immediately. But now, when William told her to stay, she obediently sat still on the blanket inside. That little opportunist. Once she was settled, William turned back to me. He hesitated briefly, perhaps mindful that the child could hear, then cast another glance at Yuzu before leaning close. His voice low and trembling with restrained emotion. Lily, he murmured, you really are asking for it. But the instant the words left his mouth, his eyes reddened. And then, without warning, he pulled me into his arms and held me tightly, as though he was afraid I'd vanish again. Chapter 21. My body felt as though it no longer belonged to me, frozen stiff, every muscle locked in place. William buried his face into the curve of my shoulder, his breath hot against the sensitive skin of my neck. Then, something warm and wet fell onto my collarbone. I trembled. At first, I couldn't believe it. Tears? From him? I wanted to push him away, to look at him and see for myself, to be sure. But William wouldn't let go. His arms only tightened around me. After a long while, his rough, low voice finally broke the silence. Pack your things. You're coming home with me. Home? I asked quietly. Why would I go back? His voice sharpened. What do you think? Lily? You've run off with my daughter long enough, haven't you? You and my sister. I've already repaid everything I owed her. He interrupted flatly. The transplant's been done. She got a compatible kidney. From now on, her life has nothing to do with mine. His tone was calm again now. When I looked up, the redness still lingered faintly in his eyes. But beyond that, there was nothing. No trace of weakness. No sign of tears. For a second, I wondered if what I'd seen earlier had just been an illusion. Repaid? I repeated, frowning slightly. William's eyes flicked toward me. Yes, repaid. You mean you owed her something? He gave a small, humorless laugh and reached out to tuck a loose strand of hair behind my ear, his hand moving as if by habit to clasp mine. When we were young, she once saved my life, he said slowly. I nearly bled out in the outskirts after an accident. It was she who called the police, patched up my wounds, and kept me alive until help came. I made a promise that day. I'd repay that debt someday. Wait, I interrupted suddenly, my voice tightening. You said she called the police and saved you when you were little? Chapter 22. Yes, he replied, frowning slightly. It was in the undeveloped mountain area out west. Why? Did she tell you about it? I stared at him, speechless for a long moment. 1,000 tangled emotions surged in my chest. Disbelief, bitterness, realization. But William, that story, it wasn't hers. My voice broke on a small laugh that turned into a sob. She told me never to mention it. I whispered, said that you were probably being chased by dangerous people, and if I talked about it, I'd get in trouble. I was just a kid. I believed her, so I never told anyone, not even you. Lily. William's expression shifted, shock, guilt, disbelief, pain, all flickering across his face before it melted into one raw, wordless ache. He reached out, wanting to pull me into his arms, but I stepped back, shaking my head. William, tell me the truth. Was it just repayment? Or did you really love my sister? If you loved her, why force yourself to marry me? You wiped away her tears, flew a private jet across the world to bring her back. When the scandal blew up online, did you ever think about how I felt? I never wiped her tears, he said quietly. The jet, your father called me, said she was dying, couldn't make it home. I owed her my life. Lily, that's why I sent the plane. But the photos, everyone saw you touching her face. The paparazzi have the full video, he said firmly. If you don't believe me, you can watch it yourself. You always have an answer, don't you? I muttered, my voice trembling. Lily, William said, his tone steady now, each word deliberate. I'm not someone who treats love like a game. If I loved your sister, I would never have married you. Because I don't marry women I don't love. But, I started weakly. There is no but. He cut me off, and for once, I could hear the quiet, fierce truth in his voice. Chapter 23. I wanted to tell William, that's not how the story was written. In the book, this wasn't our ending. But how could I explain something like that? It would sound insane, impossible to believe. And truthfully, I didn't even know how the new story would unfold now. Yuzu, on the other hand, was completely fascinated by William. Over the next 2 days, she stopped clinging to me and started following him everywhere. A tiny, adorable shadow at his heels. William was far stronger than I was. With one hand, he could easily lift Yuzu high into the air. For her, that was pure magic, something she had never experienced before. Father and daughter got along wonderfully, and that little traitor of mine seemed to have forgotten about me entirely. As the day of our return to the capital drew closer, an inexplicable unease grew in my chest. That night, after William coaxed Yuzu to sleep, he knocked on my door. We'd been married for 2 years, yet standing before him now, I still felt nervous. William chuckled softly. Don't be afraid. I'm not going to touch you. Then why are you here? He loosened his collar slightly, his voice low and rough. I just missed you. Wanted to be with you for a little while. Chapter 24. I knew I was hopeless. But honestly, how many people in this world can resist when the one they love says they miss them? Lily. William reached out, pulling me gently into his arms. Was it hard? When you were pregnant? Not too bad, I said softly. Yuzu was a good baby. I barely had any morning sickness. I just craved pomelos like crazy. What about the delivery? I hesitated. The truth was, it hadn't been easy. Eva's health had always been fragile, and I wasn't exactly strong either. But somehow, I'd made it through safely. I wanted a natural birth, I admitted. But there were complications. It turned into an emergency C-section. The anesthesia hadn't fully kicked in. Even now, my voice trembled. The memory alone still brought tears to my eyes. Giving birth felt like walking through the gates of hell, and no one knew that pain better than the woman who lived it. And back then, I had gone through it completely alone. Lily, William said, his voice soft but firm. In this lifetime, let's just have Yuzu. 1 child is enough. He cupped my face, his fingertips trembling as he tried to wipe away my tears. But there were too many. They kept falling, uncontrollably. I'm sorry, he whispered, voice thick with emotion. It's my fault. I wasn't a good husband. He kissed me gently, and I could hear the faint quiver in his breath. Why did you keep searching for me after I died? I asked quietly. Because without that search, he said, his voice breaking, I couldn't have survived even a single day. When I couldn't find you in City C, I kept thinking maybe you were still out there, alive. Somewhere. What kind of husband abandons his wife, even if you'd really died? I would have made sure you were laid to rest properly. Then why? I choked out. Why didn't you tell me you didn't love my sister? If you had told me the truth, I wouldn't have left for 2 years. I wouldn't have given birth to Yuzu all by myself. William. When you flew in that team of foreign doctors to save my sister's life, I was in the hospital too, alone, watching over Yuzu. Do you know how much that hurt? I hated you, William. I hated you so much. The pain I had buried deep inside for so long finally burst free, a flood of grief and rage that shook my voice until it became sobs. Then broken cries. William held me tightly, his Adam's apple bobbing, his eyes rimmed red. Lily, William. I wiped my tears roughly and met his gaze. Do you know what it's like in that other world? In that world, my sister was the woman you loved, your heroine, and I was nothing but the supporting role, the expendable one, the woman whose child you forced her to abort, whose kidney you took to save the one you truly loved. So when I saw those photos of you and my sister, when I saw those rumors spreading, do you know how terrified I was? How powerless. Lily, he said hoarsely. How could I ever do that to you? I married you because I loved you. How could I hurt the woman I love? I don't know what you mean by another world, he said quietly. But even if such a world existed, even if there were another me there, that man would never harm his wife. He pulled me into his arms again, his embrace steady and warm. And tell me, Lily, he murmured softly. Does a man capable of that kind of cruelty really deserve to be anyone's male lead? He rested his forehead against mine, his voice a whisper filled with certainty. Don't think about it anymore. From the beginning to the end, it's only ever been you. Chapter 25. Not long after we returned to the capital, Eva's final surgery failed. Her time was running out. When I went to visit her at the hospital, she asked everyone else to leave, leaving only the two of us in the quiet ward. By then, Eva looked like a flower that had completely withered, fragile, colorless, fading with each shallow breath. As I stood there watching her, all the resentment I had carried for years quietly dissolved. She gazed at me for a long, long time, and in her dim, unfocused eyes, tears began to gather, thick and murky. Lily, she said softly, only now do I finally believe that saying, what isn't yours will never belong to you. No matter how hard you try to take it. I thought that the life I saved, the bond we had since childhood, surely, all that would mean something to him. But in the end, he still fell in love with the unremarkable you. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she whispered, little sister, I really do envy you. But how could she have known that all my youth had been lived under the shadow of her brilliance? That for so many years, I had envied her. Maybe that's what humans are like, never satisfied. Never learning to treasure what's already ours. We chase after illusions, only to wake up and find we've been dreaming all along. Chapter 26. The day after I left the hospital, Eva's heart stopped beating for good. The Ma family's cries filled the air, loud, raw, anguished. But as I heard the news, I found myself strangely calm. When I had died in that landslide years ago, I wondered if they had grieved like this for me. Probably not. And now, it didn't matter, because this time, I had something far more important waiting for me. A life, a family, a future. William came to pick me up that afternoon. Yuzu sat in his arms like a chubby little doll, beaming up at him. The moment she saw me, her face lit up. She waved her tiny hands and babbled happily, reaching out for me. William carried her over. The instant he was close enough, Yuzu threw herself toward me, all giggles and baby scent. I kissed her soft cheek. Let's go home. But halfway through the drive, William gave the driver new instructions. Take us to the old house tonight. He held Yuzu close, but his free hand found mine, refusing to let go. My parents said they miss her. I looked ahead through the windshield but couldn't help a small, amused smile. Are you sure that's all this is about? William, ever the picture of composure, adjusted Yuzu in his arms and leaned closer to my ear. Mrs. Su, he murmured with a teasing warmth. I didn't know you could be so wicked. I shot him a glare, but he only laughed quietly, and tightened his grip around my fingers, intertwining them with his as the city lights rolled gently past our window. Chapter 27. Yuzu ended up staying at the old estate, not just for one night, but for 3, and William, somewhere along the way, he'd clearly unlocked every hidden level of mischief imaginable. He was terribly good at being bad. When his kisses left me breathless and dizzy, I couldn't help but cry out his name over and over, husband, but he pressed his hand against my waist, pinning me down to the bed with a smirk. What's this? Why aren't you calling me brother-in-law anymore? Didn't you say you liked it that way? I glared at him, furious, yet somehow, that one glare only made his eyes darken, filled with a warmth that melted everything between us. He pulled off his tie and tossed it carelessly onto the carpet. When his fingers moved to his belt, I gave up completely, turning my face away, eyes fluttering shut. Lily, his voice grew soft, his lips tracing slow, lingering kisses, one after another, until finally they stopped at the faint scar across my lower abdomen. A C-section scar isn't just one cut. It slices through 7 layers of flesh and muscle. Any man who's seen that, who's watched the woman he loves endure that pain, should know that to be worthy of her, he must love her as if his own life depended on it. William kissed the scar gently. I've already scheduled the surgery. Lily, we're not having more children. But he must have guessed what I wanted to say. With a family as vast as the Su's, and him being the eldest son, the heir, the weight of expectation was heavy. You don't need to worry about any of that. He murmured, I'll handle it. Then he smiled, voice soft but certain. And besides, who says a daughter can't inherit the family business? At the time, I thought he was joking, but years later, our daughter really did take over. The Hawaiian sun was warm and golden that afternoon. Yuzu called while William and I were lounging side by side, basking in the light. On the screen, our daughter, dressed in a tailored suit with flawless makeup, already looked every bit the powerful executive. But the moment she saw us, she pouted. "Mom, Dad, you're so mean. You two ran off on a private vacation and dumped all the company work on me. I've been so busy I haven't had time for a single date in 2 weeks." William raised a brow, his voice teasing but laced with jealousy. "Oh, is your little boyfriend upset about that?" Yuzu laughed, proud and radiant. "He wouldn't dare." "Oh, really? Considering your boyfriend's the crown prince of City C, I'd say he has every right to." William's tone was calm, but that unmistakable edge of possessive fatherly jealousy made me laugh. "So what?" Yuzu shot back playfully. "I'm a princess. He's the one marrying up. Don't bully Samuel too much," I said, smiling. Our daughter laughed again. Okay. I know." When the call ended, I turned to William. "We always said we wouldn't let her marry out. You really think the family from City C will agree to that?" "If they don't," he said simply, "then too bad. Yuzu's not leaving the capital." I sighed, still smiling. "Let the kids figure it out themselves. I'm done meddling." William pulled me into his arms, his voice low and warm against my ear. "Good. It's about time you focused all your attention on me. For someone your age, you're shameless." I teased, but my laughter softened as I leaned into his embrace. And in that moment, I realized something. This time, the story of this world, our story, had been written by me, Lily, in my own hand, and I couldn't imagine a happier ending than this one.